In the American West, Yellowstone is arguably one of the most iconic national parks in the United States. Every year, millions of visitors come to the park to see its geysers, hot springs, canyons, wildlife, and all the other natural wonders that make it such a globally treasured place. But many people are unaware that this seemingly idyllic stretch of land harbors a dangerous secret. Deep beneath the surface lies an enormous supervolcano capable of ending not only our national park, but potentially all life on Earth. So what if Yellowstone's sleeping giant suddenly wakes up? Could it spell our end? Let's find out. Today, we're going to talk about Yellowstone National Park and what would happen if its supervolcano erupted. But before we do, let me just say that this channel is all about exploring the amazing world of ancient fossils, learning about the history of life on Earth, and answering the question, how did we get from this to this? And if you like those kinds of topics, then I invite you to subscribe so you can join us every week for new videos. Yellowstone National Park spans over 2.2 million acres in the northwestern corner of the United States, straddling the border between Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. It is the world's first national park, established on March 1 Street, 1872. The park is home to more than 10,000 species of plants and animals, including more than 600 different kinds of mammals. Its most famous feature is the Yellowstone caldera, commonly referred to as the Yellowstone supervolcano. This massive volcano has been largely dormant since the Pleistocene epoch, but it has the potential to unleash a cataclysmic eruption that could threaten all life on Earth. The Yellowstone supervolcano isn't actually a single volcano, but rather a series of 3 interconnected calderas, or volcanic craters. These include the Willow Park, the Middle, and the Yellowstone caldera. Over the last 2 million years, these calderas have produced a total of 24 eruptions. However, the largest and most recent eruptions occurred during the Pleistocene epoch between 2.6 million and 11,700 years ago. The largest of these was the La Garita caldera forming event, which took place about 27.8 million years ago. This eruption was one of the largest in Earth's history, with an eruption magnitude of 8. Eruptions of this size are extremely rare, with only 3 others known to have occurred over the past 10 million years. For comparison, the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980 had a magnitude of 5. Fortunately, these large eruptions are quite rare. In fact, the La Garita event was the largest eruption at Yellowstone in more than 10 million years. However, there is still cause for concern. The most recent eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano occurred around 640,000 years ago and was much smaller than the La Garita event, with an eruption magnitude of 6. Despite its relatively small size, this eruption left behind a 45 by 25 mile caldera. In addition, it deposited 240 cubic miles of ash, pumice, and other volcanic debris across the region. So while the supervolcano hasn't blown its top in a major way for quite some time, scientists know that it is due for another large eruption. But why should we care? Why does it matter if a supervolcano erupts in Idaho? Well, because the effects of such an event would be catastrophic, not only for the local area, but for the entire planet. During an eruption of this size, ash and debris would be ejected into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and causing global temperatures to plummet. In addition, sulfur dioxide gas would also be released, leading to the formation of sulfuric acid in the stratosphere. This acid would then fall to the earth in the form of acid rain, killing off countless plants and animals in the process. Finally, the release of carbon dioxide from the volcano could lead to ocean acidification, further disrupting the balance of life on Earth. So what would actually happen if Yellowstone were to erupt today? If the eruption were to occur while most of the country was sleeping, it would likely take most Americans by surprise. Even though the USGS maintains a close watch on the volcano, the chances of a large eruption are so remote that it isn't something most people think about. According to Frank Loan, a professor emeritus of geology at the University of Wyoming, a major eruption would give us a few warning signs, but not much time to prepare. First, there would be an increase in earthquake activity in the region as magma moved beneath the surface. This would be followed by an uplift of the ground as the magma chamber began to fill. Then as the magma reached the surface, the ground would begin to bulge and crack. A minor eruption might give us several weeks or even months of warning, but with a super eruption, the signs would occur within a few days, and we would have little time to respond. In the immediate aftermath of the eruption, the surrounding area would be completely devastated. Pyroclastic flows would surge through the valleys, incinerating everything in their path. Meanwhile, ash and debris would blanket the entire region, burying towns and cities under tons of volcanic material. Fortunately, there aren't many permanent residents living near Yellowstone, so the human death toll would likely be relatively low. However, the same couldn't be said for the wildlife. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of animals would be killed outright by the eruption, and those that survived would face starvation and disease in the aftermath. As the dust settled and people began to emerge from their shelters, they would be greeted by a world that was completely transformed. Crops would be destroyed, food supplies would dwindle, and the economy would collapse. Without warning, we would enter a new ice age. For years, the skies would be filled with ash, and the air would be thick with smoke. As a result, global temperatures could plummet by as much as 36 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, this effect could persist for several decades, causing widespread crop failures and famines around the world. To make matters worse, the acid rain and ocean acidification caused by the eruption would further disrupt the balance of life on Earth. Countless plants and animals would be killed by the acid rain, and the oceans would become so acidic that the shells and skeletons of many marine organisms would begin to dissolve. So what can we do to protect ourselves from the threat posed by the Yellowstone supervolcano? Well, unfortunately not much. Even if we were able to evacuate the surrounding areas, the effects of the eruption would be felt worldwide. Some experts believe that the best course of action would be to simply ride out the storm and hope for the best. Others argue that we should take a more proactive approach by developing new technologies that could help us survive the aftermath of an eruption. One such technology is cloud seeding, which could potentially be used to remove ash from the atmosphere and restore sunlight to the surface. Another is ocean fertilization, which could help to neutralize the acid in the oceans and allow marine life to rebound. Of course, these are just a few of the many ideas that have been proposed, and it remains to be seen what, if anything, we will actually do to mitigate the effects of a super eruption. What is clear, however, is that such an event would have profound implications for all of us. When we think about supervolcanoes, we often imagine scenes from the movie Pompeii, where an entire city is literally wiped off the map in a matter of seconds. While this is certainly possible, it's important to remember that not all volcanoes erupt in the same way. The type of eruption that would most likely occur at Yellowstone is known as a Plinian eruption. This is characterized by the ejection of large amounts of ash and pumice into the atmosphere, as well as the formation of a towering ash cloud. A Plinian eruption at Yellowstone could send ash and pumice raining down over an area of more than 100,000 square miles, covering states like Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho in a layer of volcanic debris. But the effects of a Plinian eruption would go far beyond the immediate area. As the ash and pumice spread out, they would eventually cover much of the western United States and even parts of Canada and Mexico. The fine ash particles would be carried high into the atmosphere and eventually spread around the entire globe. This would have significant effects on the climate, potentially triggering a volcanic winter. Now, here's where things get really interesting. A volcanic winter occurs when the ash and gases released from a volcano block the sun's rays from reaching the Earth's surface, causing temperatures to drop dramatically. In the case of a Plinian eruption at Yellowstone, this could lead to a rapid onset of winter conditions in the northern hemisphere. Imagine snow falling in Yellowstone National Park, a place where snow is typically reserved for the winter season. But in this scenario, the temperature would drop so rapidly that snow would fall in July. It might even snow in places like Florida and Death Valley, which never see snow in normal times. But what exactly would this mean for us humans? How would we fare in such a dramatic climate shift? The truth is, nobody is 100% certain. However, It is safe to say that a volcanic winter would have serious implications for agriculture and food production. With crops failing and food supplies dwindling, we would be facing a global famine unlike anything we have ever seen before. The economic impact would be equally devastating. The stock market would plummet, unemployment would skyrocket, and entire industries would collapse. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of a volcanic winter is the social unrest that it would likely cause. With people struggling to survive, it is likely that crime and violence would increase. Governments would be overthrown and chaos would reign. In short, a Plinian eruption at Yellowstone would have catastrophic consequences for the entire planet. But fortunately, we don't need to worry too much just yet. While scientists do monitor the volcano closely, they have given no indication that an eruption is imminent. In fact, the chances of a major eruption are so remote that it is considered to be a very low-risk event. Nevertheless, it is always good to be prepared. We should make sure that we have a plan in place for what we will do in the event of a national emergency. This includes having a supply of food and water on hand, as well as knowing how to take shelter in the event of an eruption. By taking these simple precautions, we can rest easy knowing that we will be ready for whatever Mother Nature throws our way. Thanks for watching. What do you think would happen if Yellowstone's supervolcano erupted? Do you think we would be prepared for such an event, or would it catch us off guard? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.